Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for joining the call related to the market enhancements for summer 2021 readiness initiative. The purpose of this call is to review the draft tariff language and the business requirement specification for this initiative. This is Christina Osborne with ISO Stakeholder Affairs. I will be the meeting facilitator. So we have Anthony Ivankovich, Andrew Ulmer, John Anders, Jordan Penuve, and Phil Weaver from ISO's legal team. They will be walking through the red line tariff. We also have Ken Kasparian from the Project Management Office, and he's going to provide an overview of the Business Requirement Specification, or BRS. By the way, the BRS was posted this morning. It's out on the release planning page, so if you go to the ISO website, go to the Stay Informed tab, you'll see the release planning page link there, and the BRS is under the summer 2021 heading. So if you look to the right of your screen in the panelist window, you'll see a list of the other ISO subject matter experts who have been involved in this effort, and they're available to respond to questions. I'm not going to read off all of their names, but they are logged in as well. We are going to break for questions kind of throughout the meeting. So as we go through the tariff, we'll pause for questions, and then also during the BRS presentation, we'll take questions during that time as well. So we are recording the call today. We will make that recording available out on the initiative webpage. It'll probably be, as soon as we receive it from AT&T, which will be earlier next week, we'll make sure that it's out there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anthony. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the tariff language.
Thank you, Christina. First thing, I want to thank everybody for participating in today's meeting. We really do appreciate your input on these matters, and I encourage everybody to submit written comments and edits on the tariff language. We are providing an opportunity to do that. One thing I do want to stress is that the tariff revisions at this stage are pretty much an initial draft. Our goal was to capture the concepts in the draft final proposal, but we do recognize there is still work to do on this. However, we did believe it was important to circulate draft tariff language at the earliest possible time, given the expedited nature of this initiative. One change that I do want to point out is we are not going to discuss load, export, and real priority tariff revisions on today's call. We are still considering the content of the proposal in this regard, and in particular, we want to consider the comments we're going to get on the draft final proposal that are due today. Because there's a possibility there may be changes to the proposal, we didn't think it would be constructive to walk through the tariff provisions today. Our intent would be to post any revised proposal and tariff language on the load, export, and wheeling priority issues as soon as practicable. But again, we need to review the draft final proposal comments and discuss whether any changes are appropriate. I think before we walk through the remaining tariff provisions, Christina, I'm going to open it up to see if anybody has any questions before we get started.
Sure. So if you do have a question, press #2 to raise your hand. Any questions?
And one just came in.
Great, thanks.
We have a couple. First caller. Caller, your line is unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hi, Dan Williams from Customized Energy Solutions. Just on that last point that you made, would you expect to have a brief stakeholder call to go over any of those changes before or after releasing that those revisions?
I would imagine that we would. I will defer to Anna McKenna if she is on the phone. But I would imagine we would have a brief call to go through them.
Okay. Thank you.
And we'll go to the next caller. Caller, your line is unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hey, this is Michelle Keto at the CPUC. I just wanted to follow up on that. It would be really helpful to have an additional meeting, even if the changes, if there are additional changes, but even if there aren't changes, because it was hard to follow the examples. I think that they were, stylized, and they didn't really go over all of them, and it would be super helpful if we could, delve into the details so we understood what the priorities were under, a number of different scenarios. So that would be really helpful, and that's our request. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Michelle.
No further questions in the queue.
And Janelle, can you promote Anna McKenna as a panelist, please?
Yes.
Hi, sorry, this is Anna McKenna. Wanted to respond to the concerns about additional postings with the new information. We definitely are going to have, provide, if you wish, some additional sessions to review any changes that happen as a result of the comments coming in later today and some of the input we've been receiving. And we will schedule some calls and post revised documentation both on the proposal changes if it happens as well as tariff changes. So yes, and that will happen before we go to our board, and also, of course, definitely before we file. But we are working to have opportunities for exchange on any additional changes that come down after today. So just wanted to assure folks about that. And I did not catch Michelle's question. I apologize. I was trying to figure out how to get onto the line. But if Michelle, if somebody can tell me what Michelle's question was, I'd be happy to answer it.
And Michelle, to re-enter the queue, you can press #2, and I can unmute you.
Yeah, Anna, this is Michelle at the PUC. I was just hoping that if you make changes, or even if you don't, if you could have an additional session, because the examples that you guys gave were stylized, and there are so many other circumstances that it would be really helpful to run through so that we all understand the implications of what you do. Because you can see maybe it provides the implications for some situations, but it would be really helpful so that we all understand what happens under stress system conditions for the summer.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, so even if we don't change our proposal, you're saying it would be good to have another session. Okay. We'll take that back and look into that, Michelle.
Yeah, just because you guys presented two examples, but recall when we were even talking with MSC, Scott Harvey brought up a couple of times, well, we really need to understand what's going to happen under, all sorts of situations so we don't have, anything unexpected happen this summer, at least to the extent that we can, suss it out first, especially when you're dealing with, like, those complicated penalty provisions for many different resources. So that would be really helpful for us to understand. Thank you.
You're welcome. We'll do that. We'll look into that. Thank you.
Any other questions, Janelle?
No further questions.
Okay. Andrew, you on?
Hi, good morning. This is Andrew Ulmer with the California ISO. Should we proceed, Christina?
Yes, please.
Okay. The first set of tariff revisions to track the draft final proposal that's been issued in this initiative has to do with import market incentives during stressed system conditions, tight system conditions. I'm not sure exactly what the best phrase there is, but it's a relatively straightforward change to Section 1121 of the tariff. And if you're looking at the WebEx screen, we can scroll down to Section 11.21.3. And this section is entitled MakeWhole Payments for HASP Block Intertie Schedules. And what we've done is we've structured the tariff section with the following logic. One, eligibility for the MakeWhole payment, to how we'll calculate the MakeWhole payment, and 3, how we'll allocate the make-whole payment, or as my wife says, how we'll pay for the dinner bill. And I think maybe what I'd like to do is just very briefly talk through the elements of this tariff section and then take any questions. Hopefully it's relatively straightforward. The eligibility section identifies the hours in which a make-whole payment or a schedule may be eligible for a make-whole payment. And those are based on notices that the ISO may issue in the day-ahead time frame or during the operating day in which we've identified an anticipated or actual operating reserve deficiency. And what our expectation is that during those hours, scheduling coordinators with HASP block intertie schedules that have been to the real-time market and receive any type of incremental schedule above their day-ahead scheduled energy, or in the case of an export, a reduction, would be eligible for a payment for the 15-minute market optimal energy that they provide. We have a couple of caveats, and that is that if those quantities are subject to intertie deviation settlement rules or our HASP reversal rule, they would not be eligible for the make-whole payment, as well as the fact that if we observe adverse market outcomes, we may exercise authority to suspend this make-whole payment, and then also reinstate the make-whole payment as appropriate. And that's essentially the first subsection of this section with respect to eligibility. The calculation of the payment, the second element of this, is essentially resource specific. There's a positive difference between the HASP block intertie scheduled bid and the relevant 15-minute market LMP. So if the schedule is eligible for the payment, the make-whole payment, and we calculate a make-whole payment so that there is a positive value, then then it will receive it. So it's a relatively straightforward calculation. Again, happy to answer any questions. I just want to touch on the cost allocation element of this first. And in short, the cost allocation is one where we are effectively identifying amounts that at any trading, any settlement interval that we would allocate to measure demand or attribute to measure demand, needed demand and exports, and then amounts we would attribute to EIM transfers out. And once we parse that amount, we would then allocate the costs of those different buckets for measured demand to scheduling coordinators in proportion to their measured demand, and then for EIM transfers out in proportion to those EIM balancing authority areas that have net EIM transfers in during the settlement interval. A lot of the language in the cost allocation really does effectively try to mirror what we've done with real-time market bid cost recovery. So some folks who are familiar with that language may see that mirrored here. And that's essentially it for the structure of this tariff section. So I'll stop and see if there are any initial questions. And as Anthony mentioned, we're obviously open for feedback and written comments as well after the call.
And there's
again, if you have a question. Great.
Sorry about that.
Let's count two if you have a question, but go ahead, Janelle.
Caller, your line is unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hey, Andrew, it's Mark Smith with Calpine. Good to hear your voice. The calculation of the make-whole payment, I think on the policy provision said it would be not netted across hours. You do say it's hourly, but since sort of the main mechanisms of the ISO's BCR are across the whole real-time trade horizon or day-ahead horizon. Maybe we can make it a bit more clear that the MakeWhole is particularly applied hour by hour. If you want, I can try that, but I think you get the gist of my comment.
I do, and that there's certainly no intent to net the MakeWhole payment across the operating day through real-time market. So we'll look at that and see if we can make that more clear.
Thanks, Andrew.
No further questions. Thank you. No further questions.
Oh, great. Thank you. Okay.
And Christina, I should add, this is Andrew. There is some text we've added to section 29 of the tariff. It's really pointer text, given that there is a cost allocation element here to EIM entities, potential EIM entity scheduling coordinators. We wanted to make sure we had text there that pointed back to section 11. But that's all that is.
Great. Thank you. All right, John Anders, are you on?
Yeah, I'm on, Christina, and Andrew, that's a good segue to the proposed tariff revisions to reflect the proposed changes to the resource efficiency test and also EIM coordination. The first thing I'll say about this is that the draft final proposal includes, several elements, mostly related to improving EIM coordination among balancing authority areas to, do things like, not double count mere resources and improve, the priorities for base schedules and intertie resource derates and the capacity test, et cetera, et cetera. But in all of that, and we'll go over that a little bit more later in the business requirements specification, we've identified two tariff changes that are necessary to implement these proposals. So, Christina, can you roll back just a little bit right there? Yeah, that's perfect. So here, yeah, you got it there. So here, the first of these two tariff changes is really pretty straightforward, and that's to reflect the requirement that mere resources for system resources, so these are mere resources with the ISO that are mirrored at ISO scheduling points, would be a requirement and no longer something that was sort of optional, if you will. So those changes here are in section 29.7C. And they make it clear that the CAISO will mirror schedule changes using the mirror resource functionality at the scheduling points with the CAISO. So this is intended to capture the day ahead schedules and translate them, appropriately and correctly into the real time. So with that single change, and then I'll move from there into the changes to reflect the uncertainty requirements in the capacity test. But let's see if there's any questions about the changes to require auto matching for mirror resources.
Sorry, started to scroll down to 12. Okay. Do we have anybody in the queue? Janelle, again, press #2 to raise your hand.
No one at the moment.
Okay, well, if anyone does have a question, we'll circle back to anything that they want to discuss. So Christina's scrolling through this, and I'll just say the reason we have all of the text here in the blue and yellow shading is we have some current pending amendments to these sections that are were filed with FERC to capture the changes to the EIM base schedule timelines and also the real-time settlement rules. And so those are proposed with different effective dates. So we've shaded them here, but shown them as clean, so you can see the incremental changes against a clean version of that. We'll obviously reconcile all of that in the tariff records, but we thought it was easiest just to show that as clean here. So with that, the changes to this section are really to make sure that we've captured the uncertainty requirement was previously only done as part of the flexible ramping sufficiency test. So we capture that uncertainty requirement in the bid range capacity test portion of the resource sufficiency test. So that is starts here in section 29.34L, and the same language, just stick right here for a second, Christina. This kind of same language is then repeated through other sections. So structurally, it references section 44 of the tariff, which is where the uncertainty requirement is determined, and then it captures that in terms of the EIM entity BAAs and also the CAISO BAA. So you'll see a slight difference in terminology here, and that's really because in EIM BAAs, they have base schedules and resource plans, and in the CAISO BAA, we have RUC schedules, HASP advisory schedules, and HASP intertie block schedules, FMM schedules, and the like. And that's what this is intended to do is create symmetry between the two market runs, in other words, the resource planning for EIM BAAs and the CAISO, market runs for the CAISO. So you can scroll down a little bit, and you can see here again, we're saying or the CAISO equivalent because we don't have a resource plan. We have all these other market runs, and we've captured all of those market runs in the different sections of the bid range capacity test. Okay, let's keep scrolling down, and then you have some additional changes coming up. Here we go. Yeah, where it just talks about the application of the test and the consequences for the failure of the test, and we're just making some clarifications here to be clear that the CAISO BAA and the EIM entity BAAs are all treated similarly with respect to the bid range capacity test and the effects of any failures of those tests. So that's the sum of changes, and that again is just to address the proposal to include the uncertainty requirements as part of the capacity test. So I think with that, I can open it up to questions on these tariff changes.
Sure. So do we have anybody in the queue, Janelle? Again, press pound 2 to raise your hand.
And no one in the queue at this time?
Okay, I'll be on the call if it comes up later, but otherwise we really appreciate it. And if you do come up with any comments on any of this, we look forward to those being submitted, and we'll respond after that.
Great, thank you, John. I think Jordan is up next. Are you on the speaker line, Jordan?
Christina, this is the section we are not talking about today.
Oh, that's
so
right.
we can review. We'll probably be reposting after we look at the draft final proposal comments. So we can move on to the RDRR section.
Okay, so Bill's on the line. Hold on, Bill. I'm trying to get through here. I think. Here we go. Bill, you on?
And Christina, please let me know if there's any excessive buzzing on my line. My neighbors have a unique dedication to landscaping consistent with our stakeholder calendar. So Apologize if that happens, but
you sound okay.
you sound okay. Okay. Liability demand response resource enhancement tariff revisions. I'm not going to go over them in too much detail because they should be very familiar to our stakeholders and fairly unsurprising. Really what we're doing with RDRRs is expanding them from being, the 5-minute real-time RTD resource to also having the options based on their operational characteristics of being the 15-minute and hourly block resources as well. So that starts with technology that we developed for our intertie resources and then expanded to proxy demand resources or other type of demand response resources in ESDR 3 in 2019. And so the tariff provisions for that really mirror what we're doing here. We're simply just expanding the capability to be 15-minute or hourly block resources and then dispatching and settling them as such. So if we could scroll down, a lot of this is just adding and RDRR to existing provisions that speak to these issues. Let's see. So there shouldn't be any surprises here. I think the only other really tariff provision we've had is this in here in Section 34, just clarifying that in addition to the ability to exceptionally dispatch RDRRs, we can also dispatch them and optimize them in the various real-time market processes that are otherwise spelled out in Section 34, which is our real-time market section. So that's basically it for RDRR. Fairly straightforward, mirroring ESDR 3. I'll pause here to see if anyone has any RDRR specific questions.
Sure. Janelle, do we have anybody in the queue?
Yes, we do. We have a couple of callers. Bit of an echo. One moment. All right, caller, your line is unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is Alan Meck from. That track goes really track.
I think.
I just wanted to.
Bill, hold on one second. Bill, can you mute your line for just while they're asking the question? I think it's your line. Let's see if that works. Go ahead. With your question?
I just wanted to get clarification on this because I tried asking once before what the lead time would be for people to respond once RDRR is called. And the last time I asked, Kaito said that there would be a 40-minute lead time in order to respond. But if you could participate in the 60-minute market, then I think the lead time would be T-minus 75. Isn't that right?
Just again, I didn't hear your name.
This is Alan Meck from San Diego.
Thanks, Alan. Okay.
Yeah, so Alan, I think this is Danny with the ISO. We aren't planning to change the 40-minute minimum time to start up. So if you get dispatched in the HASP run, you are correct that there would be additional time added on to that 40-minute, but we weren't planning on touching that as part of this policy change.
I think
so I'm confused. So 75 minutes do you have to respond, or what do you think?
First is notification, right? If you're dispatched in HASP, if Danny's correct, you would get a longer notification. The 40-minute requirement that we always talk about with RDRRs is something that's already baked in the tariff and not changing, and that's just saying that RDRRs have to have the capability to meet their dispatch within a 45-minute target. But if you're getting dispatched in HASP, you'll have a longer notification. So there shouldn't be any issue in meeting that requirement. Does that make sense?
Okay. I think so. All right. Thank you.
Moving to the next caller. Caller, your line is unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hey, Bill. It's Mark with Calpine. I think in part of the proposal, the ISO is going to consider RDRR as continuous in the pricing run. That was part of the proposal. That might be a modeling detail that you're going to defer to the BPM. Have you considered clarifying that in the tariff itself? Because I think that is a change. I
think we are capturing that in the tariff when we say, you'll submit in the master file that you're a 60-minute resource, and then from a bidding perspective, you're submitting hourly block bids, which are going to be, a static quantity across a whole real-time market hourly run. So I think it is captured there, but yeah, maybe we can look and see if we need to clarify that more.
Well, the hourly block run will. Ooh, this echo drives me crazy. The hourly block run will not be allowed to set LMP according to the policy proposal in the subsequent FMM or RTD markets. But in FMM and RTD, I thought that they said that it was going to be treated like a block-loaded peaker capacity, like a constrained output generator. I think that's a different form of modeling, but maybe somebody from the market policy group can respond.
Yeah, Mark, this is Danny again. You are correct that we are proposing for the 5 and 15-minute responsive discrete resources to treat them as discrete in the scheduling run and continuous in the pricing run. Are you asking if we would want to memorialize that in the tariff then?
Yeah, I'm just asking for clarity. I think that's a change. Is that something you would put in the BPM or the tariff? I guess that's my only question.
Yeah, why don't you put that in your written comments, Mark, and we'll take a look.
Okay, I'll put it in the comments that I submit today, so it'll give you some advance notes.
Perfect. Thanks.
Thanks, folks.
No further questions in the queue.
Okay. Bill,
okay,
do you need
so,
to go? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, this is still me. This is the interconnection enhancements known as other in the Summer Stakeholder Initiative. So you'll see these are two distinct independent enhancements, both in the interconnection sphere. The first is removing the cap for the behind-the-meter capacity expansion process, and you'll see that's nothing more than striking that criterion. So fairly straightforward tariff provision. If you could scroll down. And the second is giving the ISO the ability to award interim deliverability where available to independent study projects. And this will be a little different than what you see, what we posted. I think you look at that 1, 2, 3, 4, third line that's underlined. The CISO will make this determination in the calendar month before the generating facility will achieve COD. We'll probably take that calendar month language out to give us more flexibility, which should benefit both us and the interconnection customer if we need to make that determination earlier to ensure that they get the NQC on time. But otherwise, it's simply what we've talked about in the stakeholder initiative. Any questions on interconnection enhancements?
Again, press pound 2 to raise your hand. Janelle, do we have anybody?
No questions in the queue.
Okay, and this one is me as well. This is energy bids from operating reserves when arming load to meet reserves, the artist formerly known as scarcity pricing. This one also, I think, will end up being different than what you see on screen. You know, the tariff already provides that contingency-only reserves dispatched in response to a system emergency in RTED will be priced as at the bid cap. That's that sentence you see just in black text after the red line addition. So we didn't need to change that. We'll probably not go with this revision you see, which is about RTCD, which is contingency-based dispatch. And instead, what you'll see is we're going to strike the contingency-only language from the RTED sentence to make it clear that both the contingency-only reserves, which are those reserves we schedule in real time, and the day-ahead reserves, if they're dispatched in a system emergency in RTED, then they'll be priced at the bid cap. So that's what the tariff revisions will look like, and that's pretty much it, because the tariff already, like I said, prices these at that level. Any questions on energy from operating reserves?
Anybody in the queue, Janelle?
No questions in the queue.
Okay, that's actually all we have as far as the tariff. Does anybody have any questions on any of the sections? Or before we move to the BRS?
We do have a question.
Okay.
Caller, your line is unmuted. Please go ahead.
Good morning. This is Elvis Promoter from PG&E. Just one quick question. I heard from Gabe at the workshop, I think on Monday, that there would be some tariff language around storage. I might have missed it because I got on the call 10 minutes late, but is there anything pertaining to operationalizing storage that will be in the tariff changes?
It will be covered in. All right. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Gabe.
Oh, yeah. I think you were just going to say it. Yeah, those changes related to minimum stated charge will be in the Resource Adequacy Enhancements initiatives, and we'll have a separate tariff call for that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Gabe.
Yep, no problem.
No further questions in the queue.
Okay. So I'm going to switch back to presentation, and we do have Ken Kassarian on. So, Ken, go ahead. And don't forget to unmute your line, Ken. Janelle, can you hear me?
Yeah, he was on. I'm looking for, I don't see his name anymore. One moment.
Okay.
I think he might have gotten disconnected. I don't see his number.
He said he can hear.
Oh, maybe the personal line or your personal device is muted?
He said no. Ken, maybe dial back in real quick if you can.
Yeah. Yep, try that.
Sorry, folks. We'll just give it a minute.
Oh, I wonder if he's on.
Here, let me.
The other side. Ken, if you can hear us, maybe you're on the attendee side. If you want to press #2, I can unmute you that way. Nope.
No? All right. Let's see if we can call back in to the speaker line.
Okay. Okay, we have another person.
Sorry, you guys. Hold on 1 second.
Yep. Can you hear me now, Christina?
Yes, there you are.
Okay. Sorry about that. I could hear you guys fine, but I was just apparently talking to myself.
That's okay.
Okay. Well, sorry about that. Good morning, everyone. This is Ken Kasparian. I'm with the Program Management Office and wanted to provide an update on the business requirements. So as Christina pointed out, there's a draft posted this morning on the release planning page. And the background on that is the ISO team has been working hard to define the implementation plan, understand how the business technology and policy all align for business requirement, the target system changes, and the tariff. And then for the team here is to provide more information to stakeholders via this early draft that's posted. So what I was hoping today is to walk through just a high-level outline of what's in that VRS and let you know what is still coming. We want to also talk about the next steps. We're working on the integration requirements and requirements elaboration, establish our delivery plans with our vendors and internal teams, and then get an updated set of requirements along with the final policy after that comes out. So we'll talk about that at the end. Today was hoping not to drive too much into the implementation details. We've got kind of the overview. We wanted us to encourage you to follow the normal, we'll bring this more details to the RUG meetings on 3/9. You can use city tickets, and then we'll provide updates and facts as needed. So for the high-level scope, you can see here we've got that outlined. One thing I did want to point out in the external VRS, you'll note that the part around incentives, we had missed removing the language that had tied, it was in the straw proposal about import and export incentives, but that is not the case anymore with the draft final proposal. And we've got the real-time pricing, the reliability demand response, OASIS reports. What's going to be coming in the next version of the VRS is the management of storage resources during tight conditions around the changes to the regulation requirements, the operator tools, and state of charge around specifying, restrictions on state of charge. From a BPM change, there's more detail in the BRS. Those will also be continuing to be updated now that we've got a feel of what the system implementation and a lot of the details, we'll be able to start outlining what will happen in the BPMs. And then at the bottom of the slide here, you can see the initial set of systems that we know are changing. So ALPS, master file, cyber, the day ahead, RTBS, real-time, OASIS, and settlements. Can you go to the next slide? Perfect, thank you. So the master file changes, we've got the same categories here. You can see at a high level what are changing. Got cyber changing for the export and load priorities. And then RTBS for the resource sufficiency and EIM coordination. Jump to the next slide. Day ahead market and real time. See the same categories here. So export and load priorities, the EIM coordination, resource sufficiency, real-time price enhancements. They are, reliability demand response resources, and OASIS reports. Actually, Christina, you want to jump back one slide? Probably went a little too fast. I'll pause and let people just take a quick look. I know that you also have access to it yourself, but in case people are just on the presentation, get a feel of what all is in there. All of these are detailed out more in the BRS document that has been posted.
Yeah, so like Ken said, the VRS was posted earlier this morning, and also this presentation is out on the initial web page.
Okay, probably pop to the next slide. Nope, back one. I want to let people just read that for a second. Okay, and then next slide, please. Okay, so settlements. To do the strike through here on the export market incentives, like I said earlier, to align with the draft final proposal, we're not doing export incentives. There is a little confusion that was partially on my end. I did do some cross out here that in the external BRS, you'll see the decremental export intertie. So the background on this is these are still tied to imports. And so I gotten a little confused on the language myself, and even internally we were talking on it. So the BRS should be correct. And like I said, as we've been moving fast to get these pieces in place, these crossouts probably shouldn't be crossed out. I was confusing with the exports when I threw this presentation together last night. So we can have someone provide a little bit more background on that. And so give me 2 seconds here. Basically at a high level, that the ISO is proposing that import eligible for bid make-whole payments include the real-time market imports, and then real-time changes to export schedules that are reduced in real time. And I'll let the team talk more about that if there's any questions on it. Then Alps and Oasis. Christina, next slide, please. Okay, and then here's the high-level timeline. These are consistent with what you see in the RUG. The only thing that's changed from what was posted in the RUG is the tariff filing. And then this updates in this presentation will fall right into that. We do have another external BRS coming out around March 15th. You may see a update in between that for some of the storage pieces and the little clarifications if we need them. But the goal is to have an update right after the final proposals in place and we've gotten the participants' feedback. At that point, I will stop. That's all I've got. And stop for any questions.
Sounds good. So, Janelle, do we have anybody in the queue?
There are no questions in the queue at this time.
Great.
Okay.
Well,
Great.
thank you.
Ken. Yeah, so again, the presentation that Ken just went through is out on the initiative webpage, and then the BRS is out there as well. And we did link it on the slide, on the cover slide for the BRS. All right, so next steps. We did hear earlier from Dan and Michelle about holding additional sessions to go over any changes or just to provide, more explanation of, any changes to the proposal or the tariff. So those dates aren't on here, obviously, but we will send a notice when we do have information for future meetings. However, we are planning to have a second call for the revised draft tariff language. We do have that scheduled for March 18th. It hasn't been noticed yet, but just to kind of give you a heads up, we are planning a second call. So let me start from the top. The comments on the draft on a proposal are due today. The comment template's out on the initial webpage, so please use that when submitting your comments. And then the comments on the draft tariff language is due March 3rd. Again, there's a template out on the initial webpage for that as well. We are planning to have a call to adopt the MSC opinion. That's scheduled for March 8th. I believe a notice is going out early next week for that call. And then, so once we post the revised draft language, or excuse me, the revised tariff language, we'll ask for stakeholders to provide comments before we have the call. So those will be due on March 17th. And then the call will be the day after. And again, we are planning to go to the EIM governing body meeting on March 10th and then go to the ISO Board of Governors March 24th and 25th. And then shortly after that, the week after, we'll file the tariff with FERC in time so that we can implement changes by June 1. And as far as the BRS, we're just going to kind of point you to the regular process for providing feedback so that you can either provide feedback through the RUG forms or in City. So do we have any questions in the queue?
Yes, we do have a few. We'll go to the first caller. Caller, your line is unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hi, Dan Williams from Customized Energy Solutions again. Just maybe asking the obvious, but do you expect to get the MSC any updates like were discussed at the start of the call in time for them to be able to incorporate that into their opinion for adoption on the 8th?
Brad or Greg, can you respond to that? You guys on?
Yes, this is Brad. If there's any updates, we'll get that to the MSC and see if it's feasible for them to get it in their opinion.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that summarizes it.
Okay. Thanks, Brad.
And moving to the next caller. Caller, your line is unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is Bonnie Blair representing the Six Cities Group. For the comments that you are looking for next week on the 3rd, would I be right in assuming that we don't need to address the draft language on export and load priorities since that may be revised?
Anthony? Or
yeah, Bonnie, I think that's correct. We would provide, again, I think if we made any changes, we would repost and provide for another comment date in any event. So I don't think you have to put in any comments on March 3rd regarding the load and exports. We will make sure there's a separate opportunity for that.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for the clarification.
Okay, moving to the next caller. Caller, your line is unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hello, this is Alva again. Just one quick follow-up on the storage. The market simulation for this for summer readiness is in late April, early May. Would you be able to ensure that anything that is going to be implemented for the summer is included in the scope of that, even if it's not in the scope of now in the scope of summer readiness?
Alva, are you thinking about, this is Gabe again, are you thinking about the specific items related to resource adequacy enhancements?
That as well as the I don't know, actually maybe the operator tool aspect of it, maybe I don't know what sorts of scenarios you're going to be running in market simulation. I would assume market simulation should be considering cases where you're actually looking at the system's response to essentially emergency conditions. So just if it's in the scope of measures to be taken that may have any visibility to market participants, I just ask that they be included in that market simulation so we'll have some time to look at the results of any changes you're making.
Ken, I don't know if you can speak to that, but to me that seems like a reasonable request. Thanks for the feedback, Alva.
Thanks, Gabe.
And moving to the next caller. Caller, your line is unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hi, it's Callie Wells with WPTF. Apologies if I missed this earlier, but do we have an idea around when the next BRS will be posted that will include the storage pieces, especially the changes to the regulation requirements?
Yeah, this is Ken Kesper, and right now we've got one targeted for the 15th after the final proposal, but we can look into getting one put in the middle because we've got a lot of those already drafted. We just hadn't finalized, and we're working on a few more things around it. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And if you guys can get it posted earlier, I think that would be really useful just because that piece of the proposal hasn't had much discussion time. So I think it would be useful to have that ahead of time so we can kind of review it if that's going to be kind of where we get the first amount of detail on it.
Okay.
Thank you.
There are no further questions in the queue.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks, everybody. We look forward to your comments, one on the draft final proposal as well as the tariff. So enjoy your weekend, and thanks again for joining. Thank you, Janelle. Appreciate your help.
Thanks. Have a great one.
You too.
That concludes our conference. Thank you for using Event Services. You may now disconnect.